The streets of Halewood weren't kind to anyone, let alone a man dressed in rags smelling of old whiskey and dust. Nobody cared about the man curled up beside the bakery dumpster, muttering to himself and feeding crumbs to the pigeons. Most folks just saw another piece of city trash. They called him Old Ben. Some joked he probably forgot his own name. Others avoided him altogether. He was just one of many forgotten faces on the edge of society. But Old Ben wasn't really Ben at all. His real name was Nathaniel King, a billionaire no one would recognize without his tailored suits, polished shoes, or entourage. Nathaniel had vanished from the public eye 2 years ago after selling off most of his tech empire. He had grown tired of the lies, the gold-digging smiles, and the corporate backstabbing. He didn't trust anyone anymore, not friends, not women, not even family. So he disappeared, leaving behind luxury penthouses, boardroom wars, and headlines. No one knew where he'd gone. Some thought he'd died. Others whispered of a private island or a mental breakdown. Truth was, Nathaniel wanted to see what the world really looked like when no one knew his name, when no one could gain anything from him. So here he was, with a fake ID, a weathered jacket, and layers of grime that kept him invisible. Most days he wandered the blocks around Halewood's South District. The people there didn't look you in the eye unless you were holding something they wanted. He had learned a lot from the way they tossed coins his way, without a glance, as if he were a machine that said thank you when fed. But that morning was different. A sharp voice cut through the stale air. "Hey, get away from the bakery, freak!" Nathaniel flinched. The voice belonged to Jordan, the owner's teenage son. Jordan enjoyed pushing him around, kicking over his paper cup, calling him things like rat and trash skin. Nathaniel stood slowly, gripping his cane. It wasn't for walking. It was a custom-made weapon disguised as junk wood. He never used it, but he liked knowing he could. "I'm not hurting anyone," he said, voice raspy from cold and silence. "You're scaring away customers, old man." Jordan shoved him with a sneer. "Why don't you crawl back into the sewer you came from?" Nathaniel's fingers tightened around the cane, but he didn't move. Not yet. Just then, a girl stepped out from the bakery door. "Jordan, stop it. Seriously." Her name was Emily. She worked mornings at the counter, always offering him a soft roll or a smile when no one watched. She was one of the few who didn't treat him like mold. Jordan scoffed. "You defending him again? You got a thing for freaks now?" Emily shot him a glare. "He's done nothing to you. Go inside." Jordan grumbled something under his breath and stomped off. Nathaniel looked at Emily and gave her the closest thing to a smile his cracked lips could manage. "Thanks." "You okay?" she asked, slipping him a warm piece of bread. "He's just a jerk." "I've seen worse," Nathaniel replied quietly. Emily didn't know who he was. No one did. But there was something about her, genuine kindness, not polished or forced. It made him stay a little longer each day. That afternoon, after walking through the alleys and collecting discarded cans for cash, he returned to his hidden spot behind, the old church where he kept a small storage crate buried under bricks. Inside were photos, papers, and a phone that hadn't been used in months. He stared at the screen. 26 missed calls, voicemails. One message from his attorney. "Urgent. Your brother's making moves. He thinks you're dead." Nathaniel stared. Out at the grey skyline. So it begins, he thought. The past was clawing back. He picked up a small, cracked mirror. The man staring back at him looked nothing like the tech legend once featured on Forbes, but that's what he wanted. Until now. That night, the city hummed under a blanket of fog, streetlights casting hazy yellow glows over potholes and abandoned cars. Nathaniel didn't sleep. He couldn't. The message from his attorney looped in his mind like a bad song. "Your brother's making moves. He thinks you're dead." His brother, Victor King, was the kind of man who smiled at cameras, while twisting knives behind closed doors. Slick, charming, and dangerous in all the ways Nathaniel was cautious. Nathaniel had walked away from the King Empire, but Victor, he wanted the whole kingdom and didn't care who he had to bury for the crown. Nathaniel leaned against the bricks behind the old church, mind racing. He didn't just vanish to escape the world. He vanished because Victor had threatened to handle things if Nathaniel didn't back off. Back then, it sounded like corporate bluster, Now it echoed like a threat with teeth. He needed to make a move, quietly, smartly, and for that he needed someone to trust. The problem? He didn't trust a soul. The next morning came cold and sharp. Nathaniel made his usual route, playing the harmless beggar. Pigeons fluttered at his heels, pecking for crumbs. People ignored him. That was the beauty of it. No one suspects the man they don't see. Emily spotted him near the park bench and waved him over. "I saved you some coffee today. It's not much, but—" He took the paper cup with a nod. It burned his fingers in the best way. "You ever regret helping someone?" She paused. "Sometimes, but only when they prove they didn't deserve it." Nathaniel stared at her for a long second. "What if they're more than they seem?" Emily chuckled. "Aren't we all?" He couldn't tell if she was just being nice or if she saw something deeper. Either way, he knew he needed a favor. He waited until a few customers left before speaking again. "I need to use a computer, just once. Won't take long." She blinked, surprised. "What for?" "Just something personal. I can pay. You back later, I swear." Emily hesitated, then slowly nodded. "Okay, after my shift ends, I know a place we can go." That evening, they met near the old library, long since shut down but still wired for power. Emily had keys. Her dad used to volunteer there. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and dust, but the old PCs still worked, if barely. Nathaniel sat at the desk and booted up the browser with shaking fingers. It had been over a year since he touched a computer. He felt like a ghost returning to his own grave. He logged into a private system using a secure key sequence only he knew. Within minutes, pages of financial data, legal documents, and encrypted files filled the screen. Victor had indeed been busy. He'd rerouted company funds, signed fake approvals, even tried to sell one of their subsidiaries offshore. The board believed Nathaniel was away for mental health, but rumors of his death were spreading fast. Worse, Victor had moved into Nathaniel's penthouse, his house, his seat, his empire. "Everything okay?" Emily asked softly behind him. Nathaniel stared at the glowing screen. Not even close. For the first time, she saw something shift in him, the way he sat straighter. The cold, calculating eyes. He didn't look like a beggar now. He looked like a man who'd been reborn in fire. Emily crossed her arms. "You're not who you said you were, are you?" He didn't answer at first. Then he spoke, voice low and sharp. "My name is Nathaniel King. I built one of the biggest tech companies in the country, and someone is trying to erase me." Silence. Emily blinked, then let out a breath. "Okay, that's a lot." "I didn't lie to you," he said. "I just didn't tell you the truth, not until now." She studied him, uncertain, but something in her face softened. "So, what now?" Nathaniel shut the computer off. "Now, I take everything back, and I start with my brother." As they stepped out into the street, Nathaniel could already feel the weight of the world shifting. He had been silent for too long, and the man they thought was dead? He was just getting started. The following day, the wind carried a different kind of cold, the kind that whispers warning before a storm. Nathaniel could feel it in his bones as he stared at the cracked window of the abandoned library. His reflection no longer resembled a beggar, but it didn't quite reflect the billionaire he once was either. He was something else now, a hybrid of pain, strategy, and vengeance. Victor's betrayal had always been a possibility. They were brothers, yes, but their bond had always been more of a business contract than blood. Nathaniel had protected Victor from scandal after scandal, drugs, women, insider trading whispers. But the moment Nathaniel left the throne, Victor didn't hesitate. He sank his teeth into the company like a starving wolf. Nathaniel had always thought disappearing would bring him peace. He never imagined it would nearly cost him everything. By noon, he and Emily were walking through Halewood's less forgotten side, the part of town where people wore suits that didn't have holes and bought coffees for $7. He wore a baseball cap and kept his head down, but something about the neighborhood made his skin itch. "I can't believe you used to live around here," Emily muttered, glancing at the tall steel and glass towers. "Feels like another planet." "It was," Nathaniel replied. One with fake gods and plastic smiles. Their destination was a lawyer's office, one of the few people Nathaniel still trusted. A man named Elliot Graves, known for winning cases no one else would touch. Elliot didn't care about morality, only truth, power, and paychecks. The receptionist looked up and nearly choked on her coffee when she saw Nathaniel. "Oh my God, Mr. King." "Shh," he hissed quickly. "Keep your voice down." "Is he in?" She buzzed Elliot, and moments later the tall, lean man in a grey vest appeared with a look of ghost-white shock. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "They said you were dead." "I'm not," Nathaniel said, "but I might as well be if we don't move fast." Elliot ushered him and Emily into a private back room. "You have 5 minutes before I start asking how the hell you became a hobo." Nathaniel pulled a folder from his coat, filled with printouts from last night's digging. "Victor's consolidating power. He's forged 3 of my digital signatures and sold 2 of our intellectual patents. He's playing a long game, and if he finalizes that merger with EtherCorp next month, he'll bury the truth under billions." Elliot's eyes scanned the documents quickly. "And you want me to stop the merger?" "I want you to burn him legally. Get the press involved, trigger a board review, maybe even criminal charges. But I can't go public yet, not until I've got full control again." Elliot rubbed his chin. "You're asking for a corporate coup, Nathaniel." "No," Nathaniel corrected. "I'm declaring war." Emily sat silently, her hands clasped tight in her lap. It was surreal to watch the man she'd handed bagels to talk about billion-dollar takedowns like it was chess. Elliot finally nodded. "I'll leak a few things anonymously. It'll raise eyebrows, but you need allies inside. Someone still loyal to you." "I know where to start," Nathaniel said darkly. Later that night, Nathaniel slipped away alone, leaving Emily behind in a rented motel on the outskirts. She didn't like it, but she understood. This wasn't her war yet. He took a bus to the city's west side, where the glitz faded and secrets rotted in quiet places. The man he was visiting used to be his CFO, Carson Dale, a financial genius with a gambling problem and a sharp tongue. Carson lived in a condo now, half paid off and half forgotten. Nathaniel knocked on the door. It creaked open, and Carson stared at him for 3 solid seconds before muttering, "Son of a bitch." Nathaniel smiled. "Miss me?" Carson let him in. "Victor's gonna lose his damn mind when he finds out you're still breathing." "That's the idea." Carson poured them both whiskey, but Nathaniel didn't touch his. "You here to take it all back?" Carson asked. "I'm here to take him down," Nathaniel replied, "but I can't do it alone." Carson leaned back and laughed bitterly. "You really are crazy. I should say no, but you won't." Carson's eyes darkened. "No, I won't." Outside, the rain began to fall. Not gentle, not forgiving. The city was waking up to the return of its ghost billionaire, and this time he wasn't coming back to forgive. Victor King sipped his bourbon with the smugness of a man who believed he'd already won. The penthouse skyline glowed behind him, stretching across Halewood like a jeweled crown. This was his domain now. The empire was his. Nathaniel had disappeared, and as far as Victor was concerned, he was as dead as the silence in the boardroom when Victor announced the merger. What Victor didn't know, what no one in those glittering towers knew, was that the man they'd buried in memory was already moving pieces on the board. Back in the motel, Nathaniel stood over a table cluttered with files, burner phones, and hastily scribbled notes. Carson Dale leaned against the wall, puffing a cigarette like it was the only thing holding his nerves together. "You realize Victor's got private security, right?" Carson muttered. "He's paranoid now. Ever since you vanished, he's been watching everyone like a hawk. Even some of the board members are scared to cross him." Nathaniel didn't look up. "Good. Fear makes people sloppy." Carson exhaled smoke, shaking his head. "You're colder than I remember." Nathaniel finally turned. "You have to be, or men like Victor win." Emily watched the two of them, eyes scanning the documents. She still wasn't sure how deep she wanted to go, but something in her wouldn't let her walk away. Not yet. Not while she knew the truth about the man the world thought was a vagrant. "What's the plan?" she asked. Nathaniel picked up a thumb drive. This contains every backdoor Victor's ever used to launder money, forge deals, and buy silence. I've spent the last 6 months tracking the accounts. Offshore holdings, shell corporations, names he didn't think I'd remember. Carson looked stunned. How the hell did you do all that on a public library computer? I didn't sleep much. They agreed to a time Friday morning. That was the day Victor would be meeting with EtherCorp's CEO to finalize the merger. Once it went through, any chance of reclaiming the company would vanish. The timing had to be perfect. One slip, and Victor would crush them all before noon. Nathaniel's plan was risky. Step 1. Carson would alert a few former allies still working quietly in the company. Not the ones who owed Victor favors, the ones who still remembered the man who built the company from a garage, not a gold-plated boardroom. Step 2. Emily would anonymously deliver the financial evidence to a journalist known for ripping corporate fraud wide open, Lena Roswell, editor of the Halewood Ledger. She wasn't easy to impress, but she had once tried to expose Victor years ago and had been mysteriously silenced. Step 3. Nathaniel would walk back into the lion's den, not through the front door, through the foundation he helped pour with his own hands. Late that night, while the city slept and Victor likely celebrated his own ego with overpriced cigars and fake smiles, Nathaniel slipped through the underground service tunnels beneath the King Technologies headquarters. They were long forgotten, used, once during construction, sealed off from the public, but Nathaniel had never forgotten. The keypad at the maintenance hatch still worked. He'd programmed it with a backdoor override code just in case. The lock clicked open with a satisfying buzz. Inside, the hallways were dim and cold. Dust clung to the pipes like cobwebs in a crypt. This place used to pulse with progress. Now it was just a graveyard beneath the empire. Nathaniel reached the server room, 1 floor below the executive offices. It had a private access terminal. He booted it up and uploaded the thumb drive. Within seconds, terabytes of data began transferring. Everything Victor had tried to bury was rising to the surface. Above, in the penthouse, Victor's phone lit up with a flashing red alert. His face darkened as he read the security breach notice. Access from server vault. Unauthorized login location sub-level 3. Victor stood abruptly. "Get the car!" He stormed toward the elevator, eyes blazing. "Bring 2 guards. Someone's about to die tonight." Back below, Nathaniel's upload reached 72%. He didn't have much time. Footsteps echoed down the maintenance tunnel. Victor was coming, but Nathaniel wasn't scared. He'd lived in shadows for 2 years. He had nothing left to fear. Victor could come. But he would leave knowing this. The beggar he spat on was the king he betrayed. The sound of boots against metal echoed like war drums through the corridor. Nathaniel didn't flinch. The data upload ticked past 90%, the soft whir of the server fans rising with each percent like a heartbeat. He stared at the screen, jaw set, calm like a man who had accepted one truth. He'd rather burn it all than let Victor rule a kingdom built on betrayal. The metal door to the server room slammed open. Victor King stood in the frame, flanked by 2 thick-necked private security guards in tactical vests. His suit was perfect, his shoes polished, but his face was twisted with rage. "Well," Victor sneered, stepping forward, "look who crawled out of the grave." Nathaniel didn't move. "You always did like showing up late to the mess you caused." Victor's nostrils flared. "You were supposed to disappear, Nathan. You were done, and now you're here, breaking into my building." Nathaniel chuckled. "Your building?" Victor's hand twitched like he wanted to strike him. "I kept the company alive when you abandoned it. You think any of those suits upstairs cared when you walked out? They were glad you were gone." "They were scared to tell the truth," Nathaniel said. "You bought their silence with fear. Better than leaving it to rot with your idealistic bullshit." The guard stepped forward, waiting for a command. Victor held up a hand. "No, I want to hear it from his mouth. What do you want?" Nathaniel leaned casually against the desk. "I want you to watch the empire you stole unravel." "Cute, but I own everything now. I signed the deal with Ether. You're 2 years too late." The upload beeped. 100% complete. A green light blinked on the screen. I don't think Ether will like doing business with a fraud who laundered millions through shell accounts in the Caymans, Nathaniel said coldly. Or the press, or the feds. Victor's smile faded. You think I came here to beg? Nathaniel continued. No, I came to show you that the beggar you mocked, the one your employees spit on, was more powerful than all your boardrooms combined. Victor's eyes darted to the screen. What did you do? Everything you feared I would. He pulled a small device from his coat pocket, a sleek black cube with a single blinking red light. Encrypted backdoor trigger. Sends every piece of evidence to 10 servers across the globe if I press this. Victor's face turned pale. You wouldn't. Nathaniel stepped forward slowly, the two brothers now face to face for the first time in years. You think I won't take this whole thing down just to see you choke on your own lies? I was willing to walk away before. I'm not anymore. Victor was breathing hard, sweat shining on his forehead. His guards shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether this was still a conversation or the prelude to war. Then, for the first time, Victor's voice softened. You don't have to do this. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. Don't play that card. You used it the last time you tried to stab me in the back. I can fix this, Victor whispered. We can go public together. We'll blame it on outside manipulation. Say we restructured for tax purposes. You're still a legend, let's use that. You only make peace when you're cornered. And you only show up when it's too late. A long pause. Then Nathaniel smiled faintly. Not this time. He tapped the button. Victor lunged, but it was too late. The device beeped 3 times, and the data exploded into the cloud. By morning, Lena Roswell at the Halewood Ledger would have everything. The merger would be halted. The board would be forced to act. Victor wouldn't walk into another shareholder meeting. He'd be walking into a courtroom. Nathaniel stepped back as security grabbed his arm. Take him, Victor hissed. But before they could move, a new voice entered the room. Touch. Him and I'll make sure your entire team is fired by dawn. Elliot Graves, followed by 2 federal agents, their badges already in hand. Victor's jaw dropped. What the hell is this? Insurance, Nathaniel said, looking satisfied. Elliot stepped forward, calm and lethal. Mr. King, you're under investigation for financial misconduct, corporate fraud, and a dozen counts of perjury. You might want to call a real lawyer. Nathaniel shook the guard's hand off and walked out past his brother without another word. Victor stood frozen, stripped not of his clothes or cash, but of power. For once he had nothing to say. Outside, Emily stood waiting. Nathaniel approached her slowly, the city lights washing over him like dawn after a storm. You did it, she said. No, he replied quietly. We did. But deep down, Nathaniel knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The headlines exploded like wildfire the next morning. Victor King under federal investigation. Leaked files expose years of corporate fraud, from Beggar to Billionaire, the secret life of Nathaniel King. King Technologies merger. Halted amid scandal. Screens lit up with his face, some showing old photos from tech conferences, others freshly taken from when he walked out of King Technologies, escorted by federal agents and his attorney. But the real storm wasn't in the press. It was inside the boardrooms. Nathaniel sat in a high-backed leather chair across from 6 stunned executives, most of them pale and speechless. The King Technologies board of directors, people who had once sung his name, now sat awkwardly, unsure how to face the ghost who had just returned from the dead. I believe we have some unfinished business, Nathaniel said smoothly. Chairwoman, Ann Wells, a woman in her 60s with sharp cheekbones and an even sharper tongue, cleared her throat. Mr. King, you have to understand. We were told you were mentally unfit. Your brother, he lied, Nathaniel interrupted. And you believed him because it was easier than questioning the narrative. I didn't die, I disappeared, because I didn't trust any of you. Murmurs passed through the room like a slow-moving virus. Carson, seated beside Nathaniel with a smug smirk, added, Good call, by the way, and tried to regain composure. With Victor gone for now, the board will need interim leadership, and the shareholders. Nathaniel raised a hand. You won't need interim leadership. He reached into his coat pocket and tossed a folder onto the glass table. "That's a motion to reinstate me as CEO, with controlling interest restored. Through Emergency Clause 14C, it's already signed by the required third-party trustees." They stared at the document like it had teeth. Anne flipped through it. This is legal." Elliot Graves stepped into the room, smoothing his tie. "Perfectly. I double-checked myself. You'll either vote him in, or you'll be part of the next wave of headlines." The vote took less than 5 minutes. When it was done, Anne looked at him with wary eyes. "Congratulations. Mr. King, welcome back." But Nathaniel wasn't smiling, because not everyone welcomed his return. Later that day, Emily walked through the corporate lobby with him, her sneakers out of place against the polished marble floor. She looked nervous. "I don't belong here," she muttered. "You belong wherever you want," he said simply. She glanced up at him. "You've changed, you know. You walk different now. Talk different." "I'm still me," he replied. "Are you?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Because the man I shared cold coffee and stale bread with wasn't trying to scare people into silence. That stopped him." "I'm doing what I have to," he said after a moment. "Victor tore this place apart. I'm just putting it back together." Emily studied him. "Just don't become what he was." Nathaniel didn't answer. That night he sat in the penthouse again. His penthouse. Everything was back. The view, the tailored suits in the closet, the soundproof windows that kept the city out. But it all felt wrong. He stood by the glass, drink in hand, when Carson called. "You're not gonna like this," Carson said. Nathaniel tensed. "What is it?" "They're saying Victor's been released, on bail." "What?" Nathaniel's voice hardened. "Yeah, and it gets worse. He's lawyering up with some big names. He's not hiding either. Rumor is he's planning a press conference." Nathaniel gritted his teeth. "Of course he is. He's going to spin it. Say it was a smear job. Paint himself as the victim. He's already feeding dirt to reporters. They're sniffing around, asking where you really went, why you left, who you were with. One of them even showed up at the bakery asking Emily questions." Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. "Tell the legal team to prep. If he wants a war in the media, we'll give him one." He hung up and stared out at the city. Victor wasn't going to vanish quietly. No, he was going to fight with every dirty trick he had left. And Nathaniel would need to decide something soon. Was he going to rebuild what he lost, or burn the whole damn system down to keep it out of Victor's hands? The next move would define everything. By the time Victor appeared on live television, Nathaniel already knew what kind of circus it would be. The cameras were perfectly placed. The lighting softened Victor's face, making him look wounded and noble, not criminal. He wore a charcoal grey suit and a soft blue tie, the colors of calm and trust. And the speech? It was a masterpiece of manipulation. "I was betrayed by my own brother," Victor said, voice trembling just enough. "A man I loved, a man I tried to protect. What you've seen in the media is a smear campaign orchestrated by someone who vanished for years, abandoning his responsibilities. I carried this company while he disappeared without explanation. I made the hard decisions." He paused, eyes glistening as if he might cry. "I will not apologize for saving our legacy, but I will fight to clear my name. I believe in truth. I believe in family." Nathaniel stood watching it on a muted flat screen in his office, arms crossed, face unreadable. Emily sat nearby, eyes wide with disbelief. "He's really good at this," she muttered. "He always was," Nathaniel said, voice cold. "Lying is second nature to him." Carson barged in without knocking, waving a tablet. "You're going to want to see this." He placed it in front of Nathaniel. The headlines were already spreading. "Victor King claims betrayal. Brother framed me in corporate takeover." Inside the disappearance of Nathaniel King, mental health or malice? Sources say Nathaniel was living on the streets. Why? Emily paled. "They're turning on you." Nathaniel nodded slowly. "Of course they are. People love a villain story, especially when the villain wears a $1 billion watch and a $5 coat." He stood pacing. I wanted to expose Victor and walk away clean, but I should have known better. He's not just a threat in business. He's a disease, and now he's trying to infect the truth. Carson lit a cigarette with shaking hands. He's got public sympathy. His legal team's already hitting the PR circuits. If we don't fight back hard, you're going to be the one painted as unstable. A recluse with a vendetta. Nathaniel exhaled, slow and bitter. Then we fight back. But how? Emily asked. You can't just stand at a podium and cry on cue. They won't believe you the same way. I don't need to cry, Nathaniel said. I need to show them something they can't ignore. He picked up his phone and dialed. Lena, he said when the journalist answered, I have something bigger than embezzlement. I have surveillance footage, wire transfers, and a list of blackmail payments Victor made over the last 3 years. There was a pause on the line, then, tell me when and where. Tonight, but you don't get it in an email, you get it face to face. He hung up and turned to Emily. You sure about this? She asked. Once you go public, there's no going back. Nathaniel nodded. He drew first blood. It's time I showed them who the real king is. That night, the meeting with Lena Roswell took place in a locked executive suite under tight surveillance. Nathaniel showed her everything. Records Victor thought had been wiped, videos of boardroom deals with under-the-table bribes, phone calls recorded through an old encrypted server Nathaniel had never dismantled. By the time Lena left, she was pale. This could bury him forever. That's the idea, Nathaniel said. But nothing came easy. The next morning, as Nathaniel prepared to release the evidence through a press conference of his own, his phone buzzed with a number he didn't recognize. He answered. A distorted voice spoke. We warned you not to come back. The line cut. Emily walked into the office seconds later, phone in hand. You need to see this. She held up a video just posted online. It was grainy, filmed from across the street. It showed her and Nathaniel together outside the bakery weeks ago. He was handing her something. The caption read, Is Nathaniel King having an inappropriate relationship with a young employee? Nathaniel's chest tightened. They're coming after you now, he whispered. Emily looked up at him, her voice trembling. They're trying to break you through me. Nathaniel clenched his fists. No, they're not going to win. But deep inside, he knew the line was blurring. This wasn't just about business or legacy anymore. This was personal. And if Victor wanted war, Nathaniel was done playing defense. The rain was relentless, tapping against the glass walls of the press room like a drum line for Judgment Day. Nathaniel stood behind the podium, staring at the crowd of flashing cameras, journalists, and murmuring corporate insiders. This wasn't just another media event. This was his reckoning. He wore a dark suit, crisp but understated. No flash, no gold, just truth. Thank you for coming, he began, voice steady. You've all heard the stories, you've seen the headlines. You've listened to a man twist the narrative to make himself the victim. He paused, locking eyes with the front row. I disappeared because I was tired of living a life built on lies. I vanished to find out what kind of world we created, what kind of company we had become. And I came back because what I saw horrified me. He pressed a button on the podium. Behind him, a massive screen lit up with evidence, emails, offshore accounts, bank records, video clips. Gasps filled the room. This is Victor King, Nathaniel continued, not as he appears on stage, but as he truly is. A man who siphoned millions, who blackmailed board members, who silenced journalists, and who tried to frame his own brother when he feared the truth might finally crawl out of the dark. He stepped back, letting the visuals speak for themselves. For 5 full minutes, the screen played the ugly heart of the empire Victor had built. No one could deny it now, no spin, no lawyers, just evidence. And then came the final blow, a leaked audio clip. Victor screaming at a staff member about planting dirt on Emily, his voice venomous and raw. He's nothing but a beggar with a god complex. Ruin him. I don't care if you have to. Drag her name through hell to do it. The room turned cold. Nathaniel let the silence sit before speaking again. That's who he is, and if I stayed silent, if I let him win, I'd be no better than him. He stepped down from the podium. No applause, just shock, the kind that leaves a mark. Later that night, the story broke across every major network. Victor's attorneys quit. The board issued a statement announcing his permanent removal and criminal cooperation with authorities. Victor went underground. No press conference this time. Just silence. Emily found Nathaniel on the rooftop of the King Technologies Tower, staring over the city like it still owed him something. "You did it," she said. He nodded but didn't smile. She walked to his side. "You don't look like a man who just won." "I didn't," he murmured. "I just stopped someone worse from winning." She looked at him carefully. "So, what happens now?" Nathaniel didn't answer right away. The wind pulled at his jacket, the storm clouds clearing slowly above the skyline. "I rebuild," he said finally. "Not the company, not the empire, myself." "You could come back to the bakery," she said with a soft smile. "We've still got that old coffee maker you loved." He chuckled faintly. "You think I could go back to being a beggar after all this?" "You were never a beggar," she said gently. "You were just a man hiding from the world." He turned toward her. For the first time in days, his face softened. "And you're the one person who saw me for who I was. Not the money, not the legacy, just me." She shrugged. "Well, the beard helped, made you look human." They laughed, really laughed, and for the first time Nathaniel realized something. He wasn't broken anymore, just bent. And from where he stood now, with the city below, the storm behind him, and something real beside him, he had all he needed to start again, not as a king, not as a beggar, but as a man who finally knew who he was.